Hello there and welcome Virtual Space Hero community. It is a tremendous pleasure streaming this week twice for you. Well, this is 4 times, twice for you. So we are tackling another very important topic of the virtual space, and these are the virtual events platforms. So many of us had to switch last year, not only to virtual work, to virtual meetings, to virtual learning, but also many event organizers and also many event producers, we had to switch to virtual events. So some of us have been in the area, in the industry for many years, and I am really very excited that one of them is joining us tonight at the Virtual Space Hero LinkedIn Live. What are we going to talk about? We're talking about the different platforms or destinations, as William likes to call it, for virtual events. And with that, no more secrets. He has already been announced. I'm really happy to welcome with me on the LinkedIn Live stage tonight, William Thomson from Gallus Events.
Hi, Barbara. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Thank you very much. Hi, William. It is a tremendous pleasure having you with us. And I'm
Likewise.
really very much looking forward to the conversation because we have seen so many virtual events being produced last year that were like still sort of figuring out the challenges. And that's why I'm super happy to have with me here an expert who has been in the industry for many years. But William, help us understand a little bit, what is your experience? How did you get into virtual events production?
Well, thanks. It's really nice to be here. The first virtual event I ran was in 2005. And I kind of fell into virtual because we had an event that was too popular for the venue that we had. So we had to think about how we could not lose revenue. So we opened up and we streamed that virtual. Now it was, 15 years ago. So it was much more streaming than it was a live engaging event. But as soon as I knew that this opportunity was there to effectively get more people into a room, then it kind of just it really expanded from there. And I remember having a discussion with my boss, and she said to me, "How much will you charge?" And I said, "Exactly the same as I'm charging for the physical event." And she said, "Are you crazy? No one will pay that." And I said, "Well, if we just give it away for free, where is the value in us as an organization and us in content?" And she was brave enough to kind of follow my madness. And we advertised it, and I think it was only £75 or £125, something like that. And we had nearly 250 people book onto the virtual event and 200 people onto the physical event. And for me, it was all about value. I looked at the content and thought, there's £75 worth of value in this content. That's what people are paying for. So we've got to provide it for people have to pay to attend. So I got into that really early, and this idea of having to pay, not devalue your content. And then kind of ran a few events. In 2014, I ran Europe's first conference for virtual event technology. That was in 2012. And we ran that as a hybrid event. We did that in 2013 and 2014 as hybrid. So it just always seemed to make sense to me, the idea that people can come to your event who want to come to your event. So how do you help them to do that? And then the final thing, I took over a business in 2017 called Practically Perfect PA, a really successful blog, and we turned it much more into an online resource. And we started running quarterly virtual summits in 2017. And we also ran a hybrid annual event every year. So that's now a high 6-figure profit business, and that all comes from virtual events. So when I speak to people about virtual, it's not something that I've been to a few virtual events or I've read a few books about virtual events. I really have been doing it for a considerable time. And the kind of evidence is there that if you create the great content, great connections, provide great coverage for your commercial partners, then virtual can be a really successful way of achieving your objectives.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And it reminds me a lot about the conversation that I had a month ago with Melanie Martinelli. We were talking about virtual learning journeys, and both of us have been teaching and working virtually for many years. And we see so many also advantages that, for example, the virtual space can bring to your experience as a participant. And definitely what you were tackling, the challenge of how to charge a virtual event and whether to charge, because people are still struggling with the question. And then we see that online about all those virtual events who are advertised for free all the time. We definitely need to tackle that question. But before we do that, let me just say hello. We see already we are streaming today to our main platform as usual, LinkedIn. We are streaming to Facebook and also to YouTube. So welcome to our participants over there. You have a chat and a comment function, so please use that also and let us know your questions. Hi Prasanna and hi Barbara. We see that you're connected already. Let us know where you're connecting from so that we get a better overview about our audience. But also let us know your experiences and your questions. We definitely are going to pick them up. But before we start, I'd like to have a short intro also into the virtual events platform topic, because we are going to talk about virtual events platform today, but you want to start by making a destination, correct? You call it the virtual event destination platform. Why is that, William?
Well, it's really important right to the start to make sure we're all talking about the same thing. And this idea of a virtual event platform doesn't really exist, because there's at least 10 different types of platforms that you can use to run a virtual event. And I don't mean 10 different destination platforms, I mean 10 different types of platforms. So I think it's important that what the conversation today is around the destination platform. Where does your event take place? And that's the destination platform. And to give everyone a little bit of behind the scenes, we're on a platform called StreamYard. Barbara's and I are talking on StreamYard. This is not a destination platform. This is a broadcasting platform. So the feed from here is going on to LinkedIn, but it could also be going on to a whole variety of other destination platforms. And this is where people are taking place. This is where the event's taking place, and that's the destination. So a broadcasting platform would feed into your destination platform, and there's a whole host of other platforms. So we're going to be talking about the platform where your event takes place. We might stray into a little bit around other types of platforms, but that's the distinction I wanted to make.
Super important. Thank you very much. Exactly. And for those of you out there who think about streaming, I must say I'm a super fan of StreamYard. I tested around several streaming platforms, and for me, StreamYard was like the most easygoing and understandable. For like 3 clicks, you're in and you manage it almost properly. So we see there India, Amsterdam is connected. Fantastic, still there. That is wonderful. Let me choose one of the other questions that we set up beforehand, because we also got questions from our articles that we published on LinkedIn already. And there is one question on what are the criteria if you want to select a virtual events platform or destination? What are the criteria that you think an organizer needs to keep in mind when considering a virtual event?
That question couldn't have come at a better time, because I've just finished a document for the 5th module of my Creating High Impact Virtual Events course, which is around platforms. And what I've done is I've listed questions that an event organizer should be asking their platform. And have you any idea how many questions I got to, Barbara?
How many questions?
Yeah. There's 100. Okay. And I've not given up yet, but there's 100 questions that I've got on this list of the things that you should be asking your destination platform. Now, I'm sure people who are watching might be like, you're crazy, sure there's only 5 or 10. But actually, when you get into it and you really think about what you want your platform to do, that's how granular you can get to. So that's kind of at the real granular side. But what I always talk about on when we're talking about platforms is focusing on 1 or 2 or 3 of the pillars that your virtual event should cover. And anyone who's seen me speaking before, I normally do cover this. So when you're looking at a platform, you need to think, is this platform going to cover content? Is it going to help people connect? And do I need to have good coverage for my commercial partners? And that's singularly the most useful thing that you can do before you start this search, needle in a haystack, sometimes search for the perfect platform, is take a step back and think, what is it that I'm concentrating on? And you'll find that maybe the event, when it matches your objectives, it might just be about content. You might not need people to connect. You might not need any kind of branding or virtual exhibition. And you may do, but at least asking this question, it starts you pushing down this direction of knowing what it is that you want on your platform. So it's completely different for everyone. It really is. But I hope this, taking a step back and thinking, what pillars am I covering in my event? Is it content, connections, which is, in peer-to-peer exchange, networking, and the buyer and seller exchange, or is it coverage for my commercial partners? Decide on that, and it can be one. One of those pillars is absolutely fine. It can be two, it can be three, but decide on that, and then you can start deciding how many of these 100 questions you really need to ask on your virtual event platform.
I think it's a very good one, because it also connects us to when we think about learning or organizing any kind of event. We should start by the objectives that we have, and that's exactly what you're making clear here again, because it can be that we rather want to connect the people, or that we rather want to transfer presentations or stream presentations, for example. That is really fantastic. What is, for example, if you think about platforms that you worked with, what do platforms allow us to do that we couldn't do at our physical events, for example?
Well, that's a really good question, because when we started to pivot our events, pivot was the word of 2020. The word of 2021 will be hybrid. But when we started to pivot our events, everyone was just bringing their physical event across to the virtual space, and hoping they could replicate it. And now I think we're in a situation where we've got a little bit more knowledge about virtual, and we can say, actually, what are the things that I'm able to do now that I have a virtual event? And again, not to go into too much detail, the first and most important thing is that virtual means that your event doesn't have to finish at 5 p.m. And in the physical world, your event had a very clear start time and end time, let's say 9 to 5. In the digital world, your event, in a sense, is only just starting at 5 o'clock, because there's so much that you can do with the content that you've generated at a virtual event. And this is the area that one of the areas that I'm keenest to push my students at the Virtual Event Campus, and anyone watching, is consider how you can make the most of the content that you've collected at your event. We could have done that at our physical events by recording sessions, but most people didn't do that. But virtual really allows us to do that. And it might be a surprise to you. You can tell me if it is, Barbara, but 60% of the revenue that we make for Practically Perfect PA, my virtual event business, 60% is made after the event finishes. More than half is made after the event finishes. So I would challenge everyone watching to go back to their events, look at how much money they made from the virtual events, and think, would I like another 60% of this, on top of it? Because that's what we can do. So it's a huge opportunity for us to do that, and platforms are designed now to allow us to make the most of this evergreen content. So have the content, maybe you offer it for free, but you can charge afterwards. Maybe you charge, but you can offer it for free afterwards. There's so many things that we can do. You can use a little bit of content for lead generation, but bigger bit of content for revenue generation. There's so much that you can do with the content, and platforms are really able to support us. So that's really important. The second thing that I love about platforms is that the size of the platform is unlimited. So if you and I organize an event, Barbara, we take it to a hotel, there's only 5 breakout rooms. Nothing much more we can do with that. On a virtual event platform, I can have 500 breakout rooms. It doesn't matter. There's no kind of constriction that there is in the physical space. So that makes it fantastic, really easy to break big groups up, to have a lot more content. So really, really powerful. And the third thing is really help people to connect. And I know a lot of people think that virtual events are really bad for connections, but actually they're so much better than physical, because they allow a really nice environment for people to connect. So a lot of platforms will offer a one-to-one opportunity. It can be random, it can be selected. You can move into a space without your camera on. You can turn a camera, you can have your camera on, you can move into bigger groups of people. You can watch, you can contact people directly, firstly by direct message and then by video invite. So there's a lot that we can do in this connection space. And I know, having run physical events, a lot of people only go to the event for content. And it's exactly the same in the physical world. A lot of people just go to get the content. So we shouldn't get too hung up that a lot of people aren't networking on the platform. Make it easy for people to network, encourage them, but don't push them or force them to network. And that way you get the most out of it. So when I take an event into the virtual space, I look at all the extra things that it can do rather than what it can't do. And hopefully we'll go on to a little bit later around exhibition stands. But, you know, that's a perfect example. A physical exhibition stand is 100 times better than a virtual exhibition stand. So there's some things that platforms can't do, but there's a lot of things that platforms can do.
Absolutely, absolutely. And those of you out there who are listening, so I already dragged it in. So virtual event campus, if you're interested. I know William is offering a tremendous program with several modules on how to organize and facilitate virtual events. So definitely check the program out. Amazing, because you can hear the experience of like the 15 years or more are here about virtual events production. With that, William, let's get to the first question. So Sarah is asking here a question, and it covers us completely now. The problem with virtual, wait, I got it. The problem with virtual events is that the quality of your event is largely dependent on your speaker's internet connection. Do you think speaker sessions should be pre-recorded for conferences to avoid technical hitches on the day, or should they be held live, like this event, for example, to keep the audience engaged? Thanks a lot, Sarah, for the question, William. Let's see, what is your preference?
Hi, Sarah. I'm glad you could join us. Sarah's a big fan of pre-recorded content, and she ran a really successful event. And one of the things that she said was that she was so happy that she pre-recorded the content. And I remember agreeing with her. So I'm going to agree with her again. I think you've got to look at the option of pre-recording your content for your sessions. I've just finished a 3-day event over 12 hours, 10 till 2 each day, and 90% of the content was pre-recorded. So that's a 12-hour event, 90% pre-recorded. And that makes it so much easier for a whole host of reasons. Sarah picked one up, which is relying on the internet connection. Definitely, you know, there's a big tick for that. What happens if your speaker blabs on and, you know, just talks about stuff completely irrelevant? There's nothing you can do about it. But if they send you a pre-recorded video and you're thinking, Barbara, you're like, hold on, William, you were supposed to speak about platforms and you're talking about golf. I'm not going to play that. You know, you can't do that if I was just to come on here and start blabbering away about something else. So pre-recorded has got a lot of benefits. Now, one common misunderstanding is that because it's pre-recorded, it can't be interactive. And that's something that I part of my course, but it's little tips on how to help speakers do that. Just because it's pre-recorded, imagine this was pre-recorded, Barbara, right? I could just say now, okay, what I would like you to do is take 1 minute to think about question X and then come back. Okay, that's interaction in a session. We could say, I've just put up a poll now and I'm keen to see which one of these platforms that you've used before. So take 10 seconds and fill out the polls. This is interaction. A session doesn't have to be live to have interaction. So it's a really good question. There's pros and cons. I certainly say if you're just running an event, maybe for the first or second time, don't be scared to have a lot of pre-recorded, because it'll make your life so much easier. And simplicity, if you could put this up in one of those lovely little banners, simplicity is what we should be looking for in everything that we do initially in the virtual space, and having pre-recorded content helps you do that.
I totally agree. And I also think that I've been at fantastic conferences with pre-recorded content where the speakers, for example, have been attending the chat and interacting while the pre-recorded content was streamed, interacting through the chat. And so also there was some much more interaction than one could imagine if it's just playing something that is has been recorded beforehand. That is fantastic.
One other little tip, because you gave a really good one there, was to get them engaged in the chat, is just have them available in a speaker's room after the presentation. So if they have a little bit of an internet connection or any of the other issues that you want to avoid with being pre-recorded, that's fine, because they're just in a little room speaking to a few delegates. So have your speakers on your platform, but they don't need to be presenting live.
Absolutely. But there is maybe one fundamental question that we haven't tackled yet. We talked a little bit about prices, but if we think about the platforms and all the features that they are offering, and I hear a lot now, at the end of 2020, there was a huge conference being organized, one of the biggest management conferences in Europe, and they were really surprised about the price of the virtual event, because everybody thought like it's going to be much less expensive than a physical event. So if we think about that, as a platform is the same as your venue, should you also pay the same? What is your opinion on pricing for event platforms?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And a little anecdote, in June, I had a few clients and they were looking for a platform, and I was looking for kind of the best platform for them. And I spoke to a company in North America, and they said that we are not writing any business under $70,000. So they weren't even interested in business under $70,000. This was June. By middle of July, August, they contacted me and said, have you got any business for us? So they'd set their bar way too high. They were charging too much money, and people come summertime were just saying, there's not the value here. And that similar service is being offered for 50% of that price now. So we were kind of being held a little bit for ransom initially, because some of the platforms were charging a lot of money. It was difficult to get a platform that was any good for less than $20,000, and it's in summertime in Europe. So things are really different now. But the idea that you should pay the same for your platform that you do for your venue leads to ruin. Absolutely leads to ruin. We've got to charge less for people to attend our virtual events, because we're offering less, and you can't deny that. We've got no food, we've got no entertainment, we've got no other kind of closer engagement with people, so we have to charge less. But if we charge less and we keep the costs the same, what happens? Well, we all go bankrupt and the industry doesn't work. So you've got to look at bringing the price of your virtual events down, but you've got to bring the cost of your virtual events down. And I believe that that margin can be bigger for virtual events than it is for physical events. And that's something I help organizations do. But I don't think that you run a virtual event and have to make less money. I think that you just make more, you charge less, but you spend less, and hopefully that big bit of the pie in the middle's larger. But yeah, I think some people are making the mistake of looking at their destination platform as their venue and paying the same amount of money. Not me, because I don't have that money, but anyway.
I think that brings us a little bit to the next question in terms of pricing. What should the ticket price be, the entrance fee? Because many people, you mentioned that at the beginning briefly, there are so many free events popping up, but you can do a lot of revenue also after the event. Yes, because of the recorded sessions that people still can access for a year after or something. But if you think about the event pricing itself, you would rather suggest somebody organizing an event to make it cheaper, to have them attend and then charge for the after, for having access to the recorded sessions afterwards? Or what would be your suggestion here, for example, if you don't offer the recorded sessions afterwards?
Yeah. First thing to say is I'm about 95% sure, but if you visit the Virtual Event Campus right now, you can download our pricing. So it's a 5 or 6 page PDF around how you price for a virtual or hybrid event. And that gives you so much more detail than I can give you now. And it gives you a really clear idea of tiering. It's a fantastic document. I'm really proud of that one. So if it's not there, email me and I'll send you it, but I'm pretty sure it is. But I've been so busy, I can't remember exactly what's on there. But anyway, there's nothing wrong with there's nothing wrong with having a free event. It really depends on what your business model is. I've run free events, even for Practically Perfect PA. As an example, we ran a 2-hour webinar for free, but we got 1,300 people who were interested in a £1,000 course. So it was a fantastic way for lead generation. So if we would have charged 50 quid, we might have made a couple of £1,000, but we wouldn't have got as many leads, and those leads generated to more revenue on the training course that we had. So it's really about the business model that you choose, but pricing's a really important aspect to look at. And if you are going to charge very, very basic benchmark, I think if you charge under 50 quid, you're going to make it's going to be difficult for you to make kind of any revenue, because you're going to put a lot of people off with a price. So under 50 quid is hard. I think over £500, I think that's difficult as well for, let's say a standard kind of 2-day event. I think if you're charging more than 500 quid for an event, I'd like to hear from you, and I'd like to hear how much money you're earning. But I think the sweet spot is in that kind of like 50 to 499 for a virtual event. And a lot of physical events were charging $1,499 or $2,000 for a 3-day event. And I question people, and I question the industry, were we ever really delivering the value that would equate to $3,000 at an event? I've organised some absolutely fantastic events. How many of them have truly delivered $3,000 worth of value to an attendee? So I think we can be offering a really great product for in that kind of margin. And one thing I'd like to say is that we've found a lot of research that physical events and a virtual offering, kind of like 2 to 3 times more for your physical than you're charging for your virtual. So if you've got 150 quid for your physical event, 50 quid for your virtual, 300, 100, that kind of 2 times, 3 times difference between physical and virtual seems to be working pretty well. So I hope that helps for people who are thinking about this hybrid model, or if they've pivoted a physical to a virtual event.
I think that's really a super rule of thumb. That's also what I would have said, like 1 to 3 is more or less what I have seen online, what I also experienced. It is possible to sell. Well, I think then it's of course up to the organizers also to see what you can offer afterwards when you're having like the recorded content and stuff like that, because that's definitely a very successful business model.
And I've seen that works really differently. As I said earlier, some people charging for that, some people offering it free. It's just really about the value proposition. What are you selling? My final point on this is that for all of my events, I always say that you get the pre-event, the recordings afterwards as part of your ticket fee. So I'm selling a live experience and a really good kind of online training experience. And we market that. We say to people, come to the event, enjoy it, but afterwards you've got access to this content, this training material. And I think people's perception of the value is kind of increased when you start talking about training rather than just events. So that's the kind of content learning space.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you move one step forward, we're talking about the criteria to select a virtual events destination, a virtual events platform. If we think about how to select it then, what is it that you need to do when pre-testing a platform? What are the things or the aspects that you look into when you're pre-testing, and for how long do you do that, for example?
I think the most important point is to say that you should be able to test the platform. And one of the clients I had this year, the platform just flatly refused to allow them to test it. They said to us, this is a platform, this is what it does. You either take it or you don't. And that was the same company that were charging 70 grand. So I think they've changed their idea now. Platforms, you've got to be able to say to them, we need to test this platform. We'd like to run a small event. We want to get on and look at the back end. These are really important. And most platforms will allow you to do that. This is the more expensive ones. If we're looking at a platform like Hopin or AirMeet or Balloon, which are 3 of my favorites, so Hopin, AirMeet and Balloon, they're like $99 a month. Okay, and they all offer you like 50 free registrations. So you can literally pay $100 and have 25 events that 2 people attend. So just think how much you can do in terms of learning and understanding about these platforms if you spend a couple of weeks and $100. And that's what I suggest you do. If you like the look of a platform, don't run your first event on it. Get on there, run some test events, other people in your organization, friends, family, whoever you want, get onto a platform and test it. And if it's not what you want, you've spent $100, but I guarantee you'll know much more about platforms. So I think it is important to get onto a platform as early as you can and test it. The other thing I would say is that there are organizations who are offering support on specific platforms, and definitely consider that. It might be that you can find someone who can help you onboard and talk through a platform. So you don't need to do that yourself. But Barbara, as you said, the really important thing is to test it and make sure you're comfortable with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the platforms that you were mentioning, whether it's Hopin, Airmeet, Balloon, or it's Run the World, they're all offering weekly tutorial sessions where you can join, where you can have a look. They're doing well. They are hard in selling, of course, their product, because now the market is there. The market is at the peak and or it's starting to peak. So of course you can have all those individual sessions as well. And I think for me, for example, one of the super important aspects is honestly customer service and like responses to technical questions, because we personally did have several challenges last year because the industry was overwhelmed with the request. And we have seen that most of these companies, some of them were still beta at the beginning of 2020 when I looked into them, and also the service, the support was like took way too long to run an event, a successful event. And that's why I, for example, stepped back from some of those platforms, just because it did not work from a customer service perspective for me as an organizer. What do you think? And I'm just picking up Sarah's question because I was about asking something very similar. Sarah, thank you so much. So Sarah's asking, how different do you think events will be post-COVID? Will there be an expectation for all events to be hybrid and have the option for delegates to attend remotely? So what is your outlook a little bit here, William?
A really good question. And Sarah, as I said, hybrid will be the word of 2021. It really comes to objectives, and I think you have to look at it from your objectives as an organizer, because running a hybrid event is a lot of extra resource, a lot of extra time, might be a lot of extra revenue. You have to achieve your objectives to be able to do that. Not every event has to be hybrid, in the same sense that not every physical event had to be virtual previously. I think it's about, as your organization, looking across your business and thinking, which ones can we offer as a hybrid event? Which ones do we have as an exclusive physical event? And also, what event do we have that's just virtual, that doesn't have any physical audience at all? And I think you've got to offer this to your customers, allow them to do that. But as a rule of thumb, if you've got a physical event, I can't really see any reason why it can't be hybrid. Mm-hmm. But it's whether or not you want to invest that extra time, resource, and money in doing it. You can do it quite cheaply, but I think the expectations might be a little bit higher than they were previously. The event I used to run every year, we used to spend about £2,000 to stream it, to have a virtual audience. It's a 2-day event. It cost us £1,000 to get the cameras in and the producers to do it. So sorry, £2,000 a day, so £4,000 in total. So that's what we used to stream, a 2-day event. Used to cost us £4,000. That I wouldn't be happy with that now. I'd want that to go onto a platform with dedicated content and a host and another camera and some other things. So you've got to be careful now. I think if we're showing an event virtually, we have to up the standard. So really good question, Sarah. Like a lot of these answers, probably it'll be depends. But I really think you need to focus on the objectives. And if you say to a customer, this one doesn't have a virtual element, but this event does, then you just have to see how that goes down.
Absolutely. And what do you think, your suggestion, because what I hear a lot, and I organize mainly virtual events. I have not been very active in hybrid events production at all. But what is your take on how to connect virtual and in-presence participants in a virtual event? Or in a hybrid event, sorry.
Yeah,
hybrid event.
A really, really good question. And the first thing I would say is, why do you want to do that?
Okay. Because many clients are asking for that. I would say that they want to connect the whole community in terms of connecting really everybody.
There's an expectation that this is what people want. And I'm yet to see the evidence that this is what attendees want. Now, it might be that some of the attendees want to do that, right? But I don't think it's going to be I don't think this demand is actually going to be played out at that many events. I think if you go to a physical event and you can network with 50 people who are there, I just find it a little bit peculiar for someone to say, okay, I'm going to stop networking with all you people here and go and network with someone who I could network with next week, because that person's not going anywhere. You know, if we were at a hybrid event, I think, oh, I would love to speak to Barbara, but I'm speaking to all these people. I would send a message that says, hey, Barbara, can you and I meet on a call next week? And you go, yeah, brilliant, William, because you're obviously busy networking with all the people who are there. So I'm just not sure that this is actually going to be a thing. And I think this idea of blending our audiences so they can connect, I'm not too sure. Now, it's different if you've got an event that's selling. Now, if you've got sponsors at your physical event, then they need to connect with your virtual audience. But do your delegates really need to connect with a physical and a virtual audience? I'm not too sure about that.
Thanks a lot for that. Thanks a lot for that, William. And you were already talking about sponsors, so I wanted to also tackle the aspect of sponsorship or exhibitions. So, how successful have platforms been in replicating exhibitions?
They've been very successful in replicating an exhibition, but they've been terrible at replicating the value that sponsors get from an exhibition. And it's probably the easiest thing to replicate virtually because it's an idea of a stand, a physical space. But I've seen so few examples of that working really well. And I think organisers have to take a step back and have to speak to the sponsors and their exhibitors and say, what value is it that you're getting from attending my event? What is the value? How can I replicate that? And as I often say, if you go to an exhibitor and say to them, rather than coming to my physical event this year, where you'll get 50 leads, I'll just give you 50 leads now. They would be like, absolutely fine. No one really wants to come to exhibit in your exhibition. It's not the best time that anyone ever spends their life standing on an exhibition stand. So if a sponsor comes to you and says, I need 50 leads, you should be able to generate that from your virtual event. Will that be creating a virtual booth in a virtual exhibition? Probably not. But how can you as an organizer create an experience, use the environment of a virtual platform to add that value? Because that's what we've got to concentrate on. And you do that by having smarter branding, much more interactive, much more targeted. The use of data, which you can pull off those platforms, much more targeted. And also putting your sponsors in a position where they're thought leaders and they're delivering content, or they're moderating panels, or they're tailoring their content to their audience, or they're meeting in small areas with you, or they're showing their products. And that's my final point. We used to run physical events, and I know you've done this, Barbara, but you would say to your sponsor, don't sell, right? Don't sell in your exhibition, don't sell. And that's really good. But however, there are people who are at your event who are like, I want to buy. So with a virtual event, you can say to your sponsor, here's something on the content, do a sales pitch. We'll advertise it as a 15-minute sales pitch. You can demo, you can talk to them, but this will be on the program. This is for people who want to buy. And that takes it away from this kind of more cold, boring environment of this kind of virtual stand. So really important. We don't have virtual events without commercial partners in the same way that we don't have physical events without them. But we've got to concentrate on the value, not on replicating what was a pretty poor product initially, which is this kind of normally stale environment that you get at an exhibition. I hope that's not too controversial.
I don't think so. I think it's really a fantastic answer and gives a lot of food for thought for further developing on how you develop exhibitors, how you prepare them, what you tell them, and also for events platform, of course, what do they offer in their exhibitor sections as well. Let me pick up here on one question. So Barbara asked the questions, but I'm going to take that later at the end. Prasanna is asking a very practical question about how you will manage different timelines, different time zones from different regions. So what would you suggest here, William?
Hey, Prasanna, isn't it a wonderful problem to have? because we never had that previously. We've got such a bigger audience now that we really need to think about this. And this leads us back, if you were on earlier, to my conversation around this evergreen content. There is absolutely no reason why you can't run an event at 9 to 5 in Europe, and then it starts at 7 p.m. till 2 a.m. European time to get different time zones. There's absolutely no reason that you can't do that now. Most of the platforms support that. They won't charge you any extra money for running 2 events over one 24-hour period. So there's loads of ways that we can do that. What I'm doing for one of my businesses, Practically Perfect PA, is this year we've got an event on the Thursday, which is for the European time zone, and then on the Friday we've got one for North America. So we're just repeating the event. Most of it's pre-recorded. It'll certainly all be pre-recorded for the American version, but we're just replicating it. So you really need to be smart, because it's impossible to run an event globally that everyone can attend. Right, that's just the stuff that you can do about it. You know, the Olympics have been trying to solve that problem for 100 years. Some events will happen when people are asleep and they're not going to get up for it. So you have to be smart in terms of how you structure that content for that audience.
Absolutely. And we see that there, again, the platforms with the pre-recorded or recorded content offer us a lot of possibilities. Let me ask you one final question I'm super interested in, because I also saw you already have, and I'm going to share that as well on your YouTube channel. I'm going to share the link for everybody here later on in the LinkedIn discussion. There is a fantastic overview about 10 events platforms. Those are the major platforms that I've also been working or reviewing last year. I've not been working with all of them, because some of them at the beginning were still 2020 very beta and very chaotic, honestly, when entering them, but also the increase of features and stability that they had by the end of 2020 was crazier. So I was really astonished. I'm going to put that into the links here later. But we are here on a platform, StreamYard. And as I said, I'm a total StreamYard fan. And you just recently wrote about StreamYard being sold to Hopin. So Hopin bought StreamYard, and you said that was important not only for Hopin users. So what did you mean by that, William?
Well, Hopin's a good platform, but it was behind the curve in terms of having good content, helping you put good content on stage. And most people I know who were using Hopin were already using StreamYard, because you can't do that. Exactly, you know, on Hopin, and not on some platforms, but Hopin was definitely behind the curve. You can't do little things like what you've been doing today. You know, you can't change the camera. You've got very few kind of producer controls on Hopin. You can take the speaker off and put them back on, but that's about it. And here you're able to put up the overlays. You're able to play pre-recorded content. There's lots of things that you can do. And Hopin have obviously realized that they needed to improve this, and they've done that. But the really important point that I think comes across all of the platforms is that you want to be able to say to a platform, if I'm giving you £5,000 or $10,000, how are you helping me save money elsewhere? Because I can't afford that if I've still got to pay thousands to my AV company and thousands for editing. And what they should now be able to say to you is that we've got a studio facility that helps you improve the quality of your content, which means you don't have to pay as much for your audio visual stroke broadcasting. Hopin using StreamYard will save Hopin users thousands of dollars in AV, and a lot of the other platforms have already got these studios inside them, so it should make it a lot easier and a lot cheaper for organisers to have much better content. And as we know from our physical events, content's so important, but it's even more important on virtual events, because people can leave and do something else much easier. So you've got to find a platform that helps you bring better content onto stage. And even though it looks a little bit fancy with, you know, the overlays coming up, these things are important because they engage so much more than just a flat screen, and that's what Hopin had. So really important that it's pushing organisers towards having a little bit more control of the most important thing for many events, which is the content.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that also, William, for your insights on the background here. So I'm going to the last question now. That would have been also my question about Outlook 2021. You already tackled it a little bit by saying what might happen this year, 2021, the hybrid aspect. And Barbara is asking or saying there are plenty of changes in the way we are preparing and running events. What would you say are the three main trends for virtual events for the coming 12 months? And I would just take the trend number one. You already mentioned it. It's the hybrid event, if that's okay with you. So 2 and 3, please, William.
Thanks very much, Barbara, asking me for 3. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, to be honest, because I don't think this year will be that different from last year. And I think organisations will be pushing towards hybrid once we can get back to a more physical meeting environment. Although there's some countries, Australia, for example, New Zealand are having quite decent sized physical events at the moment. It'll be interesting to see how many of them are hybrid, because you never know. Hybrid might not actually materialise. People might just drop it when they can get back. But I certainly think it's something that we should be looking for. And the second one I would like to mention, now I've given myself 10 seconds to think about it, is I would hope that we've realised how much waste went into running physical events now that we've had a year away from it, and we don't go back to the same situation once we run physical events, and we start looking at our physical events and think, do we really have to have all these people flying in from over the globe and emitting tons and tons of carbon? Do we really need to have that speaker over and put them up in a hotel? Do we really need to have all of this waste food? Do we really need exhibition stands here now that we've got sponsors engaging in much more of the content and thought leadership? And it would be a terrible opportunity missed if we didn't start to make huge impacts in sustainability from physical events, and now that we've got this virtual event experience. And this was the reason that I was so passionate about virtual for the last 5 years, was saying to people, there's so much waste at our events, run them virtually, and there's much less waste, and you can add much more value. So I hope that's the trend. And then the final thing is just, we've learned how to deliver content to our attendees that's much more engaging, much more interactive virtually. We're giving them much more options to do things. We're giving them a whole we're texturizing the environment. We're offering them choice. We're teaching them like grown-ups. We're not saying to them, right, now you have to go for a coffee between 10:45, right? Because that's when I think you need a coffee. We're creating environments where people can just disappear and get a coffee when they want. So I hope that we take the learning that we've all gone through over this last year from virtual and start making much better physical events. Because the final point I want to leave you with is, for a lot of physical events were bad, and our prime products of conferences and exhibitions are not great. So take this opportunity from what we've learned from virtual to make them a lot better. I hope that's 3 things, but that's probably more of my hope than expectation, Barbara.
I think that's very great. I also thought about the same that you were saying. What is a trend? I also see the hybrid workplace, hybrid events, the hybrid classroom as well. I also see, and exactly that was, but you were saying it already, that I think that there's going to be, again, because what I experienced in 2020, at the beginning, there was like a whole positive vibe towards virtual meetings, virtual events. And then suddenly, because of not well organized, or platforms were not stable, events were not well organized, really the feelings became pretty more negative in the mid of 2020. And now, as we also, platforms improved and virtual event organizer also improved, I do believe that there is a more positive attitude again towards virtual events, because I did have a feeling that it became rather negative at the end of 2020 because of some like really badly organized events. And I think that's something that is also important, because as you can see, there are so many possibilities on how to select different platforms, how to create more engagement in the virtual space and give more possibilities, opportunities. And maybe one thing, William, I'm not sure what's your take on that. I also have seen in terms of business models, as you were saying, this exactly 60% of the value or of the income, the revenue being created afterwards. So also this is something that is, I wouldn't say new, but it's something with the recorded sessions, what you can do afterwards, becoming super important as well for the industry.
Yeah, like a lot of things, unfortunately, Barbara, it's not new, but it's new for the events industry.
Yeah.
And there's been people who've been, there's people who are multi-millionaires from streaming content onto YouTube.
You're right.
And this has been a valuable business model for creators for over a decade. And it's only been a pandemic that's brought the events industry to this idea of how do we digitalize and monetize our content. And, you know, that should be a wake-up call for so many individuals and organizations. I don't think we lead in many particular areas, certainly not technology and certainly not digitalization. And we've got to catch up because people are doing it. There's people who have never organized an event in their life and they're now jumping on to run the world, paying $99 for the platform, streaming it to 3,000 people and making thousands of pounds by charging £5. So these people are event organizers now. So we've got our work cut out. You really need to understand this world of virtual and digital, or I think the industry is all going to be really, really struggling. And, you know, that's why I set up the Virtual Event Campus, was to have a resource that people could dig into and could find and then could start to bring that into their events. Because if we don't lead the digital events revolution, other people will. And, you know, as an industry, we're going to really struggle.
Absolutely. And with that, William, again, to all of you out there, have a look at Virtual Event Campus. William is offering a tremendous program with several modules on how to organize virtual events. It's tremendous. Have a look at that. And also in this LinkedIn post, you can connect with William. If you're not there, go to LinkedIn or check William Thomson, or you also have the possibility to follow Gallus Events on YouTube. And as I already told you, I'm going to comment on this communication thread, the fantastic YouTube tutorial or YouTube stream about the 10 event platforms, so that you can have a look at that as well. And with that, William, well, a lot of people are saying thank you already. Thanks a lot, Sarah, for being with us. Thanks a lot, Barbara, for your participation, for your question. It was tremendous having you here, William. And it's a big shout out to you again. Tremendous work, tremendous statements, and I'm happy to follow you on LinkedIn and also to see where your activities are going and staying up to date on what is happening at your end. Thank you very much for joining in my LinkedIn live stream.
Thanks so much. Speak soon. Bye.
Thank you very much. And you know, William, I prepared sort of a virtual cocktail backstage, so I'm going to be there in a minute and joining you. 1 second. Just closing down the stage, you know. Bye. So with that, I thank you very much for all of you attending this virtual space here on LinkedIn Live. We are going to have another LinkedIn Live next week, and we're talking also about a phenomenon or a feature that has been out there for many years, but also only last year, many of the facilitators sort of discovered it. And I'm really happy to have with me again, Cassie Labori from the United States, connecting, a tremendous virtual facilitator. And we're going to talk about the use of breakout rooms, and we're going to really talk about a lot of possibilities there. Cassie Labori, she has been in the virtual training industry for more than 2 decades, and some of you have already seen her probably with me on my LinkedIn Live. She is amazing. So join me also next week. Next week, we are going to be online on Friday. If not, you know, on my YouTube channel, you find all the LinkedIn Lives, and also here on my LinkedIn account, you can check them again because they are recorded. So thanks a lot for your participation, and stay tuned until next week. Bye.